So today I'm just gonna freewheel it. There's been some things going on in my life that I'm not too happy about, and sometimes it's just good to get off your chest. I just got a call from my father about my mother. My mother's been in a hospital, in a rehab unit, back into rehab unit, and it's just been an absolute nightmare. She's not doing that well, and it's less about the health care that she's actually getting, like doctors and nurses and such. And it's an absolute nightmare with the bureaucracy. Um, I don't really talk about politics too much on here, but I guess slightly I should talk about it. Is that I call myself more or less a libertarian. I don't really like government getting involved with things because they've proven themselves not to be very trustworthy, not to be competent, and not to be, like just have the best intentions for everyone involved. They're very easily taken over by vested interests who are going to make a lot of money if certain policies go a certain way. And so when I see Medicare, which is for if you're not American, is essentially healthcare for old people. It's administered by each state. And you just see it run by the government in such a piss poor manner really kind of it just makes me sigh. I as a libertarian, I actually do want everybody to have healthcare. I want it to be as good as possible and as cheap as possible, in some kind of balance between the two. Obviously, if it's really cheap, it's probably not going to be that good. If it's really expensive, then you're not going to be able to have it. So there has to be a balance between the two. And it just seems like there's a perverted direction that this healthcare system is going in. And unfortunately, my mom is now a victim of that. So for all the good that the healthcare system does for people, it leaves people out in the cold and it screws them over. And it's really everybody who's sitting in Congress down in Washington. They're to blame for this. They, especially those who, when I was a kid, HMOs, which is a health maintenance organization, essentially what doctors, something went wrong, they were liable for malpractice suits. And so they could get sued easily. So they all decided, well, if we all sort of work for a company rather than for ourselves, we can, the company will kind of protect us legally, which is not a stupid move for a doctor. The doctor doesn't have to worry about, doctors don't really make good, really good businessmen. They spend all that time in med school. Why would they want to be, poring over a spreadsheet about, and ordering supplies and all that? Why don't they just leave that to somebody else? And if you're a big organization, then you can have a legal department. You can have a whole departments that take care of these things. And so these HMOs started coming about, and the insurance that covers people will say, well, you can go in this HMO and it'll all be sort of one-stop shop style medicine. So you can go to this place for surgery, you can go to this place to have a baby, you can go to this place just to get a vaccine, or you can go to this place for your annual checkup, or if you need to get anything, really. It's a one-stop shop. And these insurance companies get involved, and they basically say, well, you can go to this place, but if you don't have the insurance, the rate will be hundreds of thousands of dollars. It doesn't actually cost that much to heal a broken bone or have a baby. That's what they're charging outsiders. It's sort of a club, and if you're not a part of the club, then you're pretty much screwed. So anyway, to make a long story short, it seems like administrators are really deciding what is good medicine, what is bad medicine. Even if it's not good or bad medicine, it's an administrator doesn't really know what good medicine is, you know? And it seems like they're calling all the shots. And so my mom is sort of being shipped around here and there. She's been moved about 4 times already. And I have no problem with the nurses and the doctors and everybody who takes care of her. It's more of these administrators. And this person has, I wouldn't say refused to. We don't even know who this administrator is, which is more my dad kind of dragging his ass about that. But it's very frustrating that you can't look at the paperwork and say, this person working for Medicare, this is the person. So if you have problems, call this person. Don't know who that is. So this is a very stressful time in my life, coupled with now being unemployed, living in a city that still has mask mandates. I'm not even sure if they have a vaccine mandate. I've read that to go into a restaurant, you'd have to have one, and they withdrew that. But every place hasn't withdrawn that from their window. Not that I have tons of money to go to a restaurant to eat, but it just seems like it's another weight in this heaviness that we have in the world. And then there's apparently this war. Maybe a war with Russia, maybe not a war with Russia. And I suppose it's very early on, but typically you would know if a war had been declared or not. I don't know. There's just not one aspect of my life that's not heavy as shit. You know what I mean? It's just every single thing. It's just piling up. And I don't seem to have an outlet for it. And it's really troubling. I think in times like this, some people would turn to religion, some people would turn to philosophy, but I've always found them to be mostly unsatisfying. They never actually solve my problem. With religion, I would say that I understand Christianity the best, actually, coming from a Christian background, or at least culturally Christian background. I understand it the best, but it's a lot of the supernatural stuff that I don't really get. So a lot of Christians say, well, without the supernatural, you can't have the philosophical side. Like as if you're going to believe me with your logic, but I have to take your word for it. The supernatural stuff is real. That is to say that I don't really find it that comforting. Because it feels like I'm out in the cold, because I don't believe something based on nothing. I'd like to think that there is a God who's looking out for me. And then all of the stress, all the background stress of the shittiness of the world, and then all the stress that's actually on me and my life and my family, that it's all a part of a plan, and that perhaps this is testing my morals, that I don't do anything immoral. This is maybe hard times, making tough men, that perhaps this is going to make me a better person, but it doesn't feel any better. Know that. It really doesn't. Perhaps it does, but I just don't see it. And also, I've turned to philosophy. There are a few books that I've read over the years. I have often been sort of drawn to Stoicism, which does tie into Christianity a little bit. I think there is a link there. But it seems like Stoicism, as well as something what's called CBE, CBT, cognitive therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. So essentially what that is you have to catch yourself in moments of depression or low mood, as they call it, because I think depression has a technical term. And you have to be able to, it's like when you're in a dream or you're having a dream, you have to be able to recognize that you're in a dream, that you're having a nightmare, and that all the stress and pain and fear that you're experiencing in the nightmare, you don't have to worry about because it's just a dream. I've always been able to do that. I think ever since I was a teenager, I've always been able to sort of realize that I have some dreams that where I end up killing somebody. Usually it's not me murdering somebody. It's me accidentally running somebody over with a car or something like that. Then I go to jail, and this is all just some kind of, wild dream. But then when I'm feeling really bad in the dream, I can just sort of, hey, it's just a dream. And then you wake up. And I wish there was something like that with depression, where you could say, this is all in my mind. I don't have to feel so bad because, none of this matters, or it's all going to get resolved one way or the other. But it doesn't really work out the same way that waking up from a nightmare works out, because if you know that the moment you realize that it's a nightmare, nothing matters. It all goes away. In fact, I wake up, so it literally goes away. But with the stress that I'm feeling, it doesn't feel like me even stopping to think about it does anything about it. If anything, it makes it worse. But I find that maybe avoiding thinking about it is actually a little bit more pleasant, because it's a little vacation from a very stressful life. I just don't find cognitive behavioral therapy works in the same way that the dream thing works, because I just honestly, just talking about it really doesn't do very much about it. Perhaps it'll, sitting down and just taking time out to calm down will stop you from figuratively or literally jumping off the edge of a cliff. But it doesn't really make your life better. It's like the blues, it might validate your feelings. You might, people who sing the blues and feel the blues and you really just understand the blues. It's a release. It doesn't really solve any of your problems. And the blues song, your wife did run away with your best friend. That you still have a drinking problem, that you still haven't paid your rent in several years, or whatever. None of your problems actually go away. It's just that you're taking a 5-minute break from them. And I just, it's not the way I'm wired to seek 5-minute reprieves from a very stressful life. I want this shit solved. I want, I feel terrible for saying this. I don't want to see my mom go through what my grandmother or her mother went through, and just she's in the hospital, she's out of the hospital, and this happened for years. And it might have been better for her. It's not for me to say that she just died somewhere in the middle of it, rather than having stretch out, and it's expensive. It's emotionally taxing for her, for the family, and that it's a terrible thing to see your mother just wither away, and some asshole bureaucrat is the one calling the shots and doing it anonymously. I'm like I say, I'm libertarian. I do not want the government doing this. I've seen what they've done. I've worked for the government. They're terrible at what they do. We need to have a government, I feel, but I don't want they fuck everything else up. Why would I want them fucking up my health, my family's health? there's got to be a different way. It's just not like universal healthcare is going to solve all your problems. It's going to change them. And you have fewer options and your taxes are going to be higher. So you will pay for it, but you won't, you know. I have been in the NHS over in England. It was pretty bad. I mean, I must say I was impressed by the way they handled out at least the administration of the vaccines during the coronavirus. But don't and like I've just heard nothing but horror stories about people who've had to to go to the emergency room, or they call it A&E over there. It's just absolutely horrible. Like the doctors, they're either overworked or they're incompetent. Which an overworked doctor is incompetent. You're more liable to make mistakes when you're overworked. It's just natural. I've heard a story, and I don't know if it's true, that the reason why a lot of these newly graduated doctors, so they have their MD, they just have to go through like the actual the actual practical aspect of becoming a doctor. They put them on 24-hour shifts or 48-hour shifts. Apparently, the whole system that was made up, that system, was because the guy who designed the system was a cocaine addict, and he could do 24-hour shifts, no problem. And he just demanded that his students do that. It's just, and that's the system we have. We know that this guy was a cokehead, and yet we don't change anything about it. It's totally amazing to me. So anyway, I'm grasping, I'm looking for anything healthy to make me feel better. I have decided that I'm not going to drink any alcohol for for Lent anyway. I'm not, like I say, I'm not a particularly religious person, but I do find a lot of what Christianity has, like the idea of Lent, of fasting, of giving up something you want, will make you a stronger person. You say, I didn't need that in the first place. But then again, I don't know if I'll be communing with God like a lot of them do. But I think it's a very healthy thing, especially this time of my life where I don't rely on that just to numb my senses for an evening. Then again, the senses aren't numbed and I don't feel any better. But at least I know that I'm a little bit healthier for it. Anyway, before this whole thing goes on, I'm just going to cut it there. I don't know how often I'll be doing this. I have to go down to down south to see my parents. So we'll be seeing a different background for a week or two. We'll see. Anyway, talk to you soon. Bye.